It is a great honor and a privilege to introduce Dr. Yakov Zilberg. We're here in your beautiful home in Kfar Saba in Israel, but you were actually born in the ghetto of Kovno in Kaunas.
Yes, that's right. I was born on the 5th of May 1942 in the ghetto, and fortunately I have survived the Holocaust. My parents were, my father was Abraham Zilberg. He was the only son of small merchants from Vabalninkas. Vabalninkas is the small town near Ponevich. He studied in Ponevich in Hebrew school, and then in Kaunas Medical School, and was graduated in 1933. And it's amazing that I have a vignette from people who graduated this year. About 40% of students were Jewish. It was the golden year of Lithuanian Jews. Later it was less and less. So my father was graduated in 1933. He became a physician, a family physician, not for a long time. And when it was a war, civilian war in Spain, so he and two his friends, also Jews, volunteered and went to fight to be a doctors in international brigade in Spain. Just before he went to Spain, he met my mother in Ponevich, and they made some barter. It was the meeting started from, he was teaching her Hebrew and she was teaching him French, because my mother was born in Ponevich, graduated the gymnasium in Ponevich, and then went to study in Belgium economics. So in 1936 she came back to Lithuania, and there my parents met. Soon after they met, he went to Spain. He spent there 2 years. Was after the Republicans were defeated, he spent some time in camp in France, and then came back to Lithuania as a communist. He became a communist in Spain, so he was a member of Spanish Communist Party. And they lived in Vabalninkas, where he was a family physician, and there was my sister born. I don't know exactly how old she was. I think she was about 3 years old when they entered Kaunas Ghetto. When the Soviet Union occupied Lithuania, my father was a communist, so he was appointed as a physician in charge of Calvaria Psychiatric Hospital. And there lived 3 of them, mother, father, and my young sister. When the war started, just several days before the war started, my father went to Kovno to ask if it's not dangerous to stay in Lithuania, because there are rumors that there will be a war, and they said him 100% there will not be a war, and don't spread panic, go back to your mission. So when the war started, they went by foot from Calvaria to Kaunas, and when they entered the Kaunas, Germans already were there. So that's how they find themselves in Kaunas ghetto. My father joined the anti-fascist underground organization there. He was a very active member in it. In 1942, as I told, I was born. I was born very sick. I had asthma, was coughing, and people after the back of my mother said, poor mother, better let him die. Because I really tortured there with my suffocation and my but fortunately I survived and grew up in the ghetto, and when I was 1 year old, they decided to that they have to save me. A mother's friend, very good friend from Ponevich, very beautiful woman, Irish-looking woman. She knew very well Kaunas and many people, and she knew about family that their children, teenagers, disappeared. I don't know why and when and where at the beginning of war. So they decided that there is a good chance that they will take a child. So they didn't make any agreement. The people didn't know that I'm going to come. So one evening, mother and her friend smuggled me in potato sack out of the ghetto in brigada that went to the work outside of ghetto. They hide somewhere during the day, and in the evening they put me on the porch and knocked, and they escaped. They didn't know what will happen with me. But as I told you, this woman, Yulia Yofer is her name, she had some information that those people will take a child. They took me, they went to police to show that I am not circumcised. They baptized me, gave me a name, Richard, and they kept me till I think it's about 2 years, a little bit, maybe a little bit less. So when I was born in 42, in 1943 I was smuggled, and in 1944 at the end my mother came back to take me after. So I was there a little bit more than 1 year with this family.
Do you have any recollections of being with the family?
I don't know their names. I don't remember them. I have some small recollection of my adoptive mother. Some very small that I walked on the main street of Kaunas, and she sold ice cream, and she gave me a lick of ice cream, and I knew that it was she. And why I don't know him? Because they were angry on my mother that she survived, and they didn't want me to give back. So after the Kaunas was released by Soviets, my mother came. So they said, go away. But she came with police and with a friend. So they have nothing to do, so they have to give me back to my mother. So my mother survived. Actually, they hid in Malina when the ghetto was destroyed and burned, and when they felt they can't stay there more, they came from Malina, and Germans already were away, and somebody, I don't know exactly who, took the group to some height in Kaunas, and my father went to bring another group from the ghetto to this shelter, and he never came back.
Your father never survived?
No. He survived. He went to the shelter, and he knew very well Kaunas. He was a member of underground, so his mission was to bring another group to the same shelter. So we went, and he never came back. So this is how he perished.
You don't know if he was taken to the 9th Fort, or?
We don't know. The only rumors were that Lithuanians still were looking for Jews in the town, and that some Jews were caught and brought to Night Fort, but no evidence was he there or where. We don't know how he was killed. My sister was killed during the children action, and I knew that I had a sister. Mother never told me how she disappeared. She never spoke about her, but during her last year, she lived with my sister, post-war sister. She told her that my sister was turned from her hands during the children action. And what I remember, when my sister told me about it, I remember that my mother once told me that there is a very strong drive to survive. And as an example, he told me about some woman that her daughter was torn away by fascists, and instead of fighting them and to be killed, she went to the crowd and disappeared. And now I think it was her story. And my sister, when I told her, my sister said probably it was her own story.
Maybe it was too painful for her to tell.
Too painful to tell, but she wanted to tell that the force to live, the desire to live, the instinct to live is very strong. After the war, my mother met my stepfather, They never married formally, but they began to live. My stepfather and my sister, post-war sister, was born in 1946, and this is also the fact that I didn't know, that my sister told me that my stepfather and father made an agreement. They lived together in one flat in Ghetto, and they were friends, so they gave a promise each one to another. The one who will survive will take care of the family. My stepfather's family didn't survive. They all perished. He was the only that survived the war. So this is the war and post-war, the story.
Yakov, can I ask, what was your first memory of your mother? What do you remember about your first recollections or your first memory?
My first recollection was when we lived in Kaunas after the war, probably in 1945. But my mother told me when she went to take me from those Gentiles that saved me, she saw me in the garden. I ran to her immediately, and when they told her go away, I started to cry and didn't want to let her go.
Wow.
But the first recollection was probably when I was 4 years old, when we lived, and the recollection was the first. I would say that one of the first things that I remember, that my stepfather and I, we went to the hospital to take my sister after the birth. This I remember very well. I also remember that she was very busy and I was free to play outside, and I walked kilometers in Kaunas alone, and she never was hysterical. After the war, we went to we went from Kaunas to Vilnius.
How long did you stay in Kaunas after the war?
I think we went we moved to Vilnius in 1947.
And can I just ask, it must have been very difficult for your mother and your stepfather to live in Kaunas, knowing that
I
there
don't
was
know. My stepfather was appointed for some important position, and he was moved by the government from Kaunas to Vilnius.
But going back and knowing that the whole Jewish community were decimated and killed, it must have been very hard living there.
Actually, we never spoke about it.
You know,
We never spoke. We never spoke about it. Why they left Kaunas. We never spoke what happened with. I knew that my father was killed. Yes, this I know. How exactly, I didn't know. Actually, maybe the first time when I started to know more about it, it was when my eldest daughter was 12 years or 13 years ago, in Bat Mitzvah year, and she made the project Roots. So she interviewed my mother, and she wrote it, and I read it and a little bit spoke with my mother about it.
But it was difficult for your mother to speak.
Yeah, probably. There are two things I would say. One is that it was difficult to them to talk about it. My stepfather never talked about the Holocaust, never. Even one word. Never. My mother sometimes, some For example, she told me that she went with her friend, how they smuggled me. She told me that a week after I was put to this family, my father went to sell my clothes on the street, and the people came, the woman came and bought my clothes, so they knew I was safe and I was in the family. And she told me that after they escaped from already ruined Ghetto, that he went back, and she asked him not to go, but he said, I have to go. She told me a lot about what a personality he was, my father. She told me that he was very brave, that he know to sing very well in different languages. He was very good in languages, so he went to Spain, so he knew perfectly about 10 languages, such things, but not very much about the ghetto, about salvation, about actions, about we didn't talk about it. And so I say there are two things. We always say that we didn't ask because it was very hard to them. But that's not the whole truth. The truth is that we were not very much interested in those things. I think we were too busy with ourselves. Studies, graduating medical school, and then career, and so on and so on. So actually I didn't ask enough, and I regret it very much. So there are many holes in the story that I don't know. So after the war, we went to Vilnius. I finished my high school in Vilnius. I entered the Kaunas medical school in 1959, and there were some professors that remembered my father. Wow. So they told me, okay, we remember it was Abraham Zilberg, a bright student. I graduated in 1965.
Can I just ask, Yakov, growing up in Vilnius and going to school, were there any other Jewish students with you, or did yeah, sure. And did you experience any anti-Jewish feeling amongst the Lithuanian? Yes and no.
There were sometimes read and so on, but I personally didn't experience it, not too much.
And in the medical school, you never experienced either?
In the medical, not at all. Not at all. In the medical school, not at all.
Wow. Wow, it's amazing.
So, but we were a very Zionistic family. My stepfather was very Zionistic, and my mother was such, so we always thought that we should go to Israel. The first attempt they did in late 50s, because they were not married actually. So my mother looked for a fiancé, and my stepfather looked for bride to make a fictitious marriage, but my father was ill and felt ill and went to the hospital, and we couldn't leave to Poland. Actually, my stepfather was arrested in 1948 and accused as a big enemy of Soviet Union. And he was sentenced for 10 years of labor. But he came after 5 years because Stalin died, and immediately after Stalin died, he was released. So 5 years my mother was alone with daughter and me. We actually experienced very hard times.
How did she support the family? How did she support herself and you and your sister?
She worked. She was as a tailor. She made some clothes. She was an economist, and she worked as a bibliographer. But at night she make clothes for children and sell them. And somehow she survived.
And Yakov, did you have any family members, cousins and uncles and aunts that survived the Shoah as well?
No, but you can see on the picture my mother with her sisters.
If you could show the picture.
Yeah.
So this is a picture of your mother and her sisters.
Yes.
Can you show us where your mother is in the picture?
My mother is, just to look at her. Here, this one.
And this was taken this was before the war?
This is before the war. It's probably something 1935, something like that.
And you have a picture of your father?
And picture of my father, I think it's
one before.
Yeah. This is my father is a medical. He's also. This is one. This one. It's.
And your father's the one on the on the left.
The left, and he is with other 3 Jewish medical students. It's written here. It's 1932.
22. And did you do medicine a lot, following in the footsteps of your father, or you always had a passion for medicine, that you wanted to be a doctor?
I never thought about it. I thought I will go to study chemistry. And last month, before entering the Vilnius University for chemistry, I switched off and decided to go, I don't know why, to go to the medical school. So when I graduated the medical school, I was sent to serve as a physician on Lithuanian fishing boats. So I spent about 3 years as a doctor on the boats. And then I worked for 1 year as in Vilnius Institute of Clinical and Experimental Medicine, making a research, and then we applied to go to Israel. And after we were refused 2 times, the 3rd time we were allowed to leave. My stepfather didn't survive. He died from jaundice, from hepatitis that he caught in labor camps about 3 months before leaving to Israel. So we went to Israel, all the family. My sister, I was already married with my wife and daughter, and my mother went to Israel.
And what year did you arrive here? In which year did you come to Israel?
In where?
In which year?
We came in 1972. 1972. And here is the different story. Different story.
And your mother and your sister were happy, and you were happy that you made that decision?
Yeah, we were all. It was for us. It was so natural to come to Israel without any problems. But I started to tell you that 4 mother sister came to Israel before the war. So here we find a family. But actually, before when we arrived, only one of them survived. Three of my aunts died before we made Aliyah from cancer and other diseases. So I find the cousins, 4 cousins here.
And when your mother met her sister when they were reunited?
Only the eldest sister she met here, but she died 2 months after we arrived. Yeah.
And the reunion must have been very emotional, the reunion when you met the sister.
My mother she visited us in Soviet Union.
She did visit.
Once, yes, the same one. She visited a couple of years before she visited Vilnius. But it was sure it was emotional.
And reuniting with the families here in Israel, did you develop a close connection with the families?
Yes, quite close. Not out of 4 my cousins, one became a close friend in Jerusalem. Quite famous architecture in Jerusalem. He already died. And two of them will be tomorrow we will have a dinner in our house.
Oh, wonderful. And Yakov, can I just ask, this is the book and this is the talk that you gave, Smuggled in Potato Sacks.
Yeah.
It was the most amazing talk that you gave at Beit Vilna. Could you just tell us a little bit about what got you involved in actually writing the book? And it's been translated into Lithuanian and into Hebrew.
Yes. To make the book, it was not my I didn't initiate it. The 2 friends, Ilana Kamber and Ariel Abranovich, both of them were born in Kaunas Ghetto, met in London. They lived in London and in Paris. And they met and they decided that as she told, we are not young, we are not healthy. Let's put our memories, let's collect all memories of all the children that survived Kaunas Ghetto and put it in the book. And Abramovich, they are very wealthy, and they promised to put money to make this book. So this was their idea. Ilana, that she was my friend, very close friend during student years, she called me to Israel and she asked my help. And I was quite enthusiastic, not so much about the book, but because she asked me, it was so I told them I'll do it, I'll help. And I started to collect the stories in Israel. Both of them wrote their own stories. They collected maybe 1 or 2 stories. And at the beginning, people didn't want to tell me. They think nothing will come of it, and it's nonsense. But then Ilana died, so I didn't saw the book. And the whole project was abandoned. So several years later, when I retired and Ilana's daughter came back to Israel and settled in Israel, she urged me to finish the project. So we started once again to collect the stories, and now people were understood that I am serious in this project. They gave me stories. Most of the stories, actually, I interviewed people, wrote it, gave them to read, to make some amendments, corrections, and it took about 4 years. It took about 4 years to make the book in English. So it was to translate from Hebrew or from Russian to English and to publish it, and Abramovich family was very active to push it and to persuade the publishers to make the book.
And do you have most of the stories of the children that survived?
No. When I have, first of all, we were limited by we were limited how much stories we can put in it. So I made the decision, when I have 50 stories, I will stop, because if I don't stop, it will be never we'll never finish the work. So I've stopped on 50 stories, and that's all. And I know about 50 names of children that survived, and they are not in the book.
Maybe
at least
can make a second edition.
No. It's a very hard work, very emotional, with people, and you know, it won't be the same. It won't be as it is the first time. So I decided not to do a second.
So Yakov, inside the book you've got a picture, and it's such a rare and such an amazing picture of Yulia Yoffe.
Yeah.
If you could just show the picture and then just talk a little about her, because she risked her life and she was very instrumental in saving you.
That's true. And her daughter, 2 daughters, one of them survived the Holocaust, lived in Jerusalem, and we are very close friends with her daughters. She passed away at age 80, sudden death.
So if you could just tell us a little bit about her, or
she was I think she was a lab worker or dentist, and her husband was a doctor. They immigrated. Actually, they made Aliyah in late 50s. So when I was a child, we were very close with families, but they left, and in 1957, when we made Aliyah, actually my mother met her. They were very close friends. When her husband died, she remarried some Englishmen and went to live in London. I visited her several times in London. As I told you, I have very good relations with her both daughters, but mainly with Lida, the daughter that survived the Holocaust. And Eula came to visit her daughter, and during the breakfast she said, "I don't feel well," and died. At age 80. And several years before, my mother also died at age 80, sudden death.
It's amazing, both at age 80.
Just coincidence, but just dropped out and dead. So didn't suffer, none of them.
And your sister?
My sister lived in Haifa. Like sister, we met sometimes. We talk very often.
And you have, if you can show, you have the book both in Hebrew. It was translated, and
Yes.
why also in Lithuanian?
Well, 2 years after the English version was done, we did the Hebrew version, where we put more pictures and we expanded stories. We made some amendments because, you know, it's not a professional book. The book is written by people who none of them never wrote except Ariel Abramovich. Ariel Abramovich made her own book, Born in the Ghetto, the special book. But she is some kind of writer. None of us is a writer, and it's not a very professional book. So
But
you
it's
know
important.
that we.
Jakov, this picture that you have
Yeah.
of the children, where was the picture taken?
It was taken in Kaunas. It's Ariel Abramovich with her friends, and it's Ariel Abramovich. It's Ariel Abramovich's birthday, somewhere in 1947.
So this was after
the war.
After
Yeah.
the war.
After the war, and we were not very glad with the cover, so we invented our own cover. This is a picture of all participants,
Oh,
of the project. Here in Lithuanian version, it's better.
and can you show the picture of you? Where are you?
A picture of mine. Yeah, sure. In this corner.
Right in the corner.
Yeah.
It's wonderful, so cute. Sure. And how old are you in this picture?
4 years old.
4 years old.
Yeah, it's after the war. It's the first my picture after
The first picture after the war.
it's my first picture.
It's your first picture.
Not because I don't know if there were pictures before and during the war. So it's first picture.
And how has the book been received in Hebrew and in English and in Hebrew and in Lithuanian?
In English, all the copyrights are of Abramovich family because they
finance.
they finance it, and it was sold. I don't know how many copies were sold, and it can buy it on Amazon, and it was a presentation in the most famous bookstore in London. I don't remember. I wasn't there. The Abramovich family was there. In Hebrew, we made about 1,000 copies, I think. So some of them were sold, not by me, but by the publisher. Most of them just we gave as a present to friends, to families, to Yad Vashem, to the National Library, to some libraries.
So important.
And the same year when the Hebrew version was made, some woman from Lithuania approached me and asked if I agree if I agree them to translate and to publish in Lithuanian. I say, of course I don't. I have nothing against. I ask Solomon Abramovich, he has nothing against. So that in 1 year they translated from Hebrew to Lithuanian, and they made very good, I think, a very good book.
And they have this is the extended with more pictures and.
Yeah, it's exactly the book.
Same as the Hebrew version.
As the Hebrew version, and this book was sent to all schools by Minister of Culture of Lithuania. Was sent to all schools in Lithuania to be in library
that's so important and so amazing. And it's sold also in Lithuania. Lithuanians
and mostly was sent to without money, but some of them were sold.
So Yakov, I have to ask you, I'm sure many people ask you this question, but having gone through, and your mother having gone through, how was her emunah? Did she have faith or?
No, we were not religious.
But did she, coming to Israel, you were very Zionistic?
Zionistic, yes. My mother, when she was young, she was a member of Maccabi movement. We're Zionistic, not religious at all.
But coming here and living in Israel, it's... did she come from a very Zionist, and your stepfather, they came from a very Zionistic family?
No. My father was also a member of Maccabi, stepfather. My father was communist, but also the Zionist. Yeah, and as I told you, he said he learned in the Hebrew gymnasium.
And your stepfather, did he treat you well?
Very well, very well.
And did you know that he was a stepfather growing up, or did you just think he was? Did your mother tell you that he's?
No, I knew from the first day. I knew that he is not my father.
But
he was. I called him always by name. Not Abba. Never I called him a father.
But he treated you like a father.
He treated me very well, and we were friends. I respected him. I loved him. He was a very good person. Very good person.
And Yakov, if I can ask, what message do you impart to your children, your grandchildren? What message can you give from all the work you've done and what you've experienced?
I'll tell you, I was lucky in Israel. I met my professional career was very good. After 1 year in the hospital, in Carmel Hospital, I was obliged to go to the national service because I didn't serve in the army in the USSR. So I was obliged to make, and I was 30 plus. So I was sent to Beit Shan to be a family physician, a general physician. And 1.5 years I have to work there. And I decided not to leave Beit Shan when I finished the national service, to stay there because there were no doctors at all, and I felt I can't. I told I am Zionist, and now I am go back to Haifa, where a lot of doctors in Beit Shan it's a desert, nobody there. So I stayed in Beit Shan for another 2 years. I became a physician of charge in Beit Shan area, and Actually, in 1976, 5 years after Aliyah, I was appointed as a medical director of the whole district. So for 5 years I was a medical director of the district. And then I was sent to England to study medical economics and management. And when I came back, I was in the central office for some time.
Where did you study in England?
London School of Hygiene and Tropical Medicine. So I was appointed as a director of a Fuller Hospital and the district. Both hospital and the district, and then I was the physician in charge of the Kupat Cholim Klalit for 5 years. And then when general director left, I also left, and I became the director of Carmel Hospital. It was my last job. So my children are quite proud of my career. I think they saw the book. I'm not sure they read the book. Probably only my story. And I have 3 daughters. All of them live in Israel. All my children and grandchildren in Israel.
It's a big book.
In Israel.
And do you speak do they ask you questions about the Shoah, or do they ask you?
Sometimes they ask me when comes a turn of grandchildren to make roots, so they ask me. Sometimes they ask me to come to the school to talk about it. Not very often.
And have you been back to Lithuania?
Many times, yeah. Many times.
And it's been positive?
I was, first of all, the first time that I went back is 18 years after Aliyah. I was sent by Sochnut to
it's a Jewish agency.
The Jewish agency to the USSR, Moscow, Leningrad, St. Petersburg, Belarus, Ukraine, and Lithuania. And then I went a couple of times, and then I have had many. Fortunately, had only few left. Many friends, Gentile friends. So I visited. I had a very good Lithuanian friend. My best friend was Lithuanian guy that we met at least two times a year. One time here in Israel and one time in Lithuania. So quite a lot of traveling, and all the time I said it's the last time that I'm here, and then comes.
It's wonderful. Wow. So Yakov, I just want to thank you. I'm going to come inside. But this has been absolutely unbelievable, Yakov. Really, I'm so grateful. We can just show the books because it's very, very special. So I was very fortunate to hear your talk in Hebrew that you gave at Beit Vilna, and I am so extremely grateful to you.
Yeah, sorry about English, because you know,
amazing.
I'll tell you, when I came back from England and when I worked, my English was much better. I'm retired for 15 years. I read books. I prefer to read books in English, not in Hebrew.
Really?
Yeah, sure. Wow. It's because the way, I'm used to read it this way, not that way.
But I think it's absolutely amazing that you have it, that this book is in the schools in Lithuania.
In Lithuania, yeah.
Telling the story, it's miraculous. It's incredible.
And I'll tell you, when we did the Lithuanian version, they asked me to cut the introduction, the historical introduction, because historical introduction is very hard on Lithuanians.
It's very hard, sure.
And I said, no way. Every sentence will be in, or there will no Lithuanian version, and they tried to persuade me and even threatened there will be no Lithuanian books. I said, so there will be no Lithuanian books. Eventually it came originally
Amazing.
In English, in introduction in English, in Hebrew, and in Lithuanian, the same. All the story about paper, all the story about killings, all the story about pogroms, all the stories are in...
And it's inside the book.
In introduction.
So I must just say that it's, Yakov, that is so important.
I think
because
it's
people
more,
are trying to revise the history and...
I think it's, in Lithuanian, it's more important than in Hebrew and in English.
I think so too. So, and that you told the truth, you've told it as it is, because people are trying to revise the history, and it's just amazing. And just the story itself, smuggled in potato sacks. You are a miracle, you really are. And I am so grateful to you, and you should just have mazel bracha, and you are an example for all of us to emulate. You really are. There are no words, and I will be eternally grateful, and really thank you very, very much.
Thank
just
you.
in good health, and you should have nachas from your dear family.
An effort to come from Jerusalem.
It's not an effort, it's been the greatest privilege.
Okay.
Thank you so much.
When I presented the book in Lithuania, I couldn't help myself to emphasize that not all the people that were our survivors were Lithuanian. Half of them were Polish, Russian, and even German. So out of the 50 stories, half of them are not Lithuanian. Yeah, that's true. So there are many, about more than 800 writers on the earth from Lithuania, quite a lot. Yes. Not all of them are Lithuanians. The family that saved me was Polish. The family that saved Ariel Abramovich was Polish.
Living in Lithuania?
Living in Lithuania, yeah. The family that saved my friend Tkach, Polish, and other family. That's true. But I am not emphasizing it, but I just mentioned that not all of them.
But thank God there were those righteous.
Okay. And they recognized as righteous of the world from Lithuania. Okay. They were Lithuanian citizens. Some of them were two Germans.
They were also righteous.
Oh, yeah. Okay.